Okay, this is a continuation of my editorials, which what do they call it? They come on from time to time. You know, that continue infinitely in the hopes of someday building as big a following as the Young Turks. Very highly unlikely, but I feel like I have as much to offer. I mean, I don't have the AP wire service, and I don't have the access to research and the graphs and some of the stuff they have. You know, the computers, access to computers. I don't have a computer, and but you could probably get quite a bit of that from just USA Today and Washington Post and periodicals like that. Anyway, but I feel like I'm mostly just using my own brain. But my feeling is that what I'm using my own brain, what I learned in political science and paralegal and the constitutional law course I took, I think should be as quality, in some ways as important as some of the things they're saying, and maybe more important. And hopefully I'll get more than 8 hits next time. But anyway, there was an argument on there between Milton Friedman. They had Bernie Sanders and Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman, and Friedman is basically Rush Limbaugh. It sounds like pretty much Rush Limbaugh's ideology, and then Bernie Sanders is arguing the socialist ideology. Well, and then Bill Maher had a commentary too, where he takes a socialist position. But what I think the trouble is, the two don't, neither one, Milton Friedman nor Bill Maher, define capitalism very well. And their concept of capitalism is distorted. It's incomplete and unrealistic, both of them. Both Milton Friedman, well, I even think Bernie Sanders is too, and Bill Maher. None of the three really define capitalism. And I have a definition of capitalism, which is on one of my other speeches, what it says pro Bernie Sanders. I have my definition of capitalism. I also have it on there's another one under Robert Polnicki that has it, the third. The one that has the biggest number of hits, the one that has 500 hits, I define capitalism, but Ralph Nader calls it crony capitalism, and I basically think that Bill Maher and Milton Friedman are both defining crony capitalism, and they don't understand what it is exactly. But Bernie Sanders had the argument: we want to take on and defeat the ruling class, the greedy. We want to take on and defeat them. And Milton Friedman comes back and said, all societies run on greed. Russia, China, all of them are run on greed. Okay, well, here's what's wrong with Milton Friedman's argument. He doesn't understand capitalism. He hasn't defined the word. He doesn't understand what it is. He doesn't understand how the capitalist system works to create a high standard of living and a high technological advancement and keep us ahead of China and Russia on a technological advancement with our weapons and everything, and keep us over as strong as the ratio of imports and exports. You know, which I've defined several times. What he's talking about is crony, and that's what I think what Nader's talking about when he calls it that. But Milton Friedman says, take on and defeat the ruling class, or all societies run on greed. But what's the problem is that, but not all societies have a campaign finance system which is corrupt. You need to control capital. You need controlled capitalism, which means you need some government control of business. If you have no government control of business, you have anarchy, essentially. And that's why the Founding Fathers created 2 parties. And it takes both party ideologies to create capitalism, for capitalism to work, and for capitalism to do what it did in the 50s, for capitalism to create a highly technologically advanced society that's higher than everyone else, to compete strong on the international market, and have the country with the tallest buildings in the world, and the most wealth in the country. And this kind of capitalism does not involve campaign finance corruption. It's one that's corruption free, and it's one where you have antitrust laws. It's one where you stop the mergers, you control the number of mergers, where you create more competition, and competition in the society is what creates technological advancement. And we have realistic prices. The prices are low enough that we're buying them from Canada. Canada's buying them from us instead of us buying drugs from Canada. And to continue, you can't have corruption. So when Milton Friedman says all societies run on greed, they all run on greed, right? But they run on controlled greed. Not all greed is bad. I mean, you take someone that's banning, and then he goes on to say that life is not a zero-sum game. This is false. Life, part of the capitalist system, there is no zero-sum game. Very often there isn't, but a lot of it there is a zero-sum game. Anyone knows that any kind of wealth is finite. Everything in the universe is finite. Everything that we know, even the edge of the universe, we don't. Einstein had a theory that the universe is finite with no boundaries. Where you start at one point and walk through the universe, you end up back where you were. In other words, but there's no boundaries, and this was just a theory. But anyone knows that the riches in the earth they're all finite, and where you have that's just not true. It is a zero-sum game very often. Take for example where you have two businesses, and one of them takes a bite out of the other one. That's a zero-sum game. Milton Friedman doesn't get it, but anyway, it is a zero-sum game. And where you need government control of business is where you have the zero-sum games. Or at least they stop the corruption. Like I say, a farmer tried to vertically integrate. Let's say the farmers aren't doing very good, and they want to increase their profits, and so they vertically integrate. Well, with campaign finance corruption, you take the meat packers could go in and put a law through that stops vertical integration. And there's already laws in place like that. But they're mostly probably there to protect the meat packer. Well, that's not a zero-sum game. It's a zero-sum game. The farmer's making more and the meat packer's making less. So he goes in and makes a law against vertical integration. That's going to take another bite out of the farmer. That's a zero-sum game. So Milton Friedman is just not rowing both oars in the water, and that's where you need some government control. You don't need to have a corrupt campaign finance system, where they're going in and making a law that stops the other one. Stops their competition, puts them out of business. That's corruption. That's not democracy, and that's what Sanders is trying to stop. And Bill Maher has the same. There's another one that says, life is not, or people working 40 hours a week are still in poverty. And Milton Friedman is arguing you can't get these people out of poverty without capitalism and free trade. Correct, but you need a trade deal which does not take jobs overseas, with a trade deal which the majority of the citizens support, because that's democracy. The will of the majority and the law of the land under a democracy are the same. The majority of the public wants trade unions. Trade unions would stop trade deals like this. So the majority should be able to create trade unions. That's what Milton Friedman doesn't say. And you need a trade deal that does business with other countries. Of course, that increases wealth in the country. Like I said, ratio imports and exports. But you have a trade deal which is designed by the public with the public input. In other words, the senators are afraid to go against what the public wants for fear of not being reelected. And the system works that way, and that means jobs not going overseas, jobs not going to Mexico, or huge taxes like Trump said he was going to put on them. And you don't need an agreement like this. What is it? This latest trade agreement. I can't remember the name of it. I can't remember it. But anyway. And NAFTA and GATT and one of the previous ones. This free trade agreement that Obama's talking about, it shouldn't go through. But it will go through because of campaign finance corruption and the fact that the corporate America has all the rights and nobody else has any. So in a sense, he's right. You can't, 40 hours a week, it takes the capitalist system, but it takes the right kind of capitalism. It takes a capitalist system that is supported by which there's no government corruption involved, where you have incentive for technological advancement and you have fair competition, and you don't have them making laws that stop the competition, and you don't have them making and trade agreements that don't take jobs overseas. You want a trade agreement, but like Nixon did with China, that one never took jobs overseas. And Nixon was a Republican. Nixon was a smart Republican, though. These ones in now aren't that bright. W was terrible, and HW was terrible. Richard Nixon was smarter than both of them put together. But that's mainly where the trouble is, and that contradicts Bill Maher too. Bill Maher also made the comment too that where I think he's mistaken when he says, well, it's like letting the capitalist system come in and fix something. It's like letting Bill Cosby fix your where you're trying to be a model or something. You're helping a model's career, and he's trying to be funny, but that's not necessarily true. The capitalist system will fix things as long as the capitalist system involves no corruption, no campaign finance corruption, no destroying competition with campaign money, and allowing antitrust laws and stopping mergers, all those things, that kind of capitalism. And that's a lot different, where you're increasing competition and increasing technological advancement and increasing the ratio of imports and exports and being strong on the international market. That's the kind of capitalism that works, not the corrupt capitalism like we've got right now. And that's where Milton Friedman doesn't get it, and that's where Bill Maher doesn't get it. And Bernie Sanders hasn't made as clear as he could. But that's all I got to say on that.